Okay, so today we come to you on our second day of our at-home workouts. We have a traditional CrossFit benchmark workout today called Michael. Michael is 3 rounds of an 800-meter run, 50 sit-ups, and 50 hip extensions. And we'll talk about the different substitutions you can do for the hip extension. We realize people don't typically have one of the glute ham developers at home. We'll start with the warm-up today, go through the warm-up, the workout, the cool down, talk about substitutions and stimulus intent for the workout. So the warm-up starts with a 400-meter jog. Then we're gonna go through 3 pose running drills, an A, a B, and a C. 2-foot hops to stride, pendulum swing to stride, and high pulls to stride. After that, we're gonna go through some dynamic mobility, steps of the heel toe walk, which should be familiar from yesterday, the hip switches, steps of a walking ankle cradle, and leg swings. The last thing we'll put in our warm-up today are some sit-ups and hip extensions because we have those here in the workout. As far as the hip extensions, just so I can point out what's in parentheses as some of the substitutions, which we'll get into in a little bit more detail, but a PVC or a banded good morning, a kettlebell swing, or a Superman can be the hip extension for your workout. We'll conclude our warm-up with some mobility of choice, and then we'll get into the workout, which we talked about was Michael. The stimulus for this workout, advanced athletes can do this really fast, in the neighborhood of 18 minutes. We did it in the endurance class the other day, and we had a 30-minute cap. So somewhere between 18 and 30 minutes is what we're looking for. And you can focus on the run here by modifying the reps in order to scale. So if you wanted to stay under that 30-minute threshold and you wanted to keep running, you can modify the gymnastics reps a little bit if you needed to there. Finally, the cool down is going to consist of a 200-meter jog, a minute of a supine hamstring stretch, a minute of a calf stretch on the pole, and 90 seconds of a cobra pose. And forgot to add one thing, that's going to be 2 rounds of A through C, and then 2 to 3 minutes of foam rolling the calf. Okay, group, we're gonna demonstrate some of the movements that are here in the warm-up. The 2-foot hops to stride. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hop up in the air. I'm gonna try to find my center of mass, which is gonna be my belly button. By pushing my belly button forward and my toes, I should bounce forward. And then by pushing my toes forward in front of my belly button, I'll stop again. So again, belly button's forward and it's pushing me forward, toes are forward, and I'm stopping. So what you want to do with this drill is kind of play with that body angle until you find a really good consistent angle to move forward, and then turn that into a stride by pulling your feet off the ground. The second point of the 2-foot hops is to feel the impact of the foot strike on the ground. What you're gonna try to do is hit the ground with the front of your foot, but gently let the heel touch the ground in the bottom. So think single under bounce versus double under bounce for that 2-foot hop. The next drill we have is a pendulum swing to stride. The purpose of this drill is to engage our upper body and stay stable while our lower body is swinging side to side, and to transfer the impact of our body weight from 2 feet to 1 foot at a time, similar to a running stride. So what I'll do here is I'll start jogging in place, and then I'll take 2 bounces on each foot. As I'm picking the other foot up off the ground, I'll start to swing it side to side like a pendulum. My focus here is to keep my upper body from swinging side to side with it. So my upper body's engaged, I'm absorbing all of my body weight on 1 foot, letting the heel touch the ground. I'm gonna find that body angle and push forward, and then I'm gonna turn it into a stride without changing anything in the body angle there. The last warm-up drill is a high pull to stride. So what we're thinking about here, the faster we're moving, the closer our ankle is getting pulled under our hip. So on one side, we're going to do a high pull as if we were sprinting. The other side is going to be a normal stride, and then I'm going to turn that into a stride. Things to think about in the high pull are keeping the ankle loose and using the hamstring to pull the ankle right under the hip. So maybe like you're squeezing an orange behind your knee. So I'll do one high pull to stride. And then for my second set there, I would do the other leg coming back. We have two other parts to our warm-up after our pose technique drills. We have 20 steps of a heel-toe walk, 10 hip switches, 20 steps of a walking ankle cradle, and 10 leg swings. Yesterday we did the heel-toe walk and the leg swings, so today we're going to focus a little bit more of our attention on the hip switches and the steps of the walking ankle cradle. So just here's a visual demo of the heel-toe walk if we missed it yesterday. And a visual demo of the leg swings if we missed it yesterday. Remember, keep the core tight and move only at the joint you're trying to mobilize. Okay, so here, let's take a look at the hip switches and the walking ankle cradle. For the hip switches, I'm going to start seated with about a 90-degree bend in both knees. To emphasize the stretch, I would reach forward. I would open up this knee and bring the other knee to the ground. So that's 1, 2, 3. If it's a little bit of a tougher movement, you can lean back and take some tension off until you feel more comfortable bringing that torso up through those hip switches. The walking ankle cradle feels similar to a pigeon pose. So I'm going to take a step, I'm going to drive my knee up and twist, and then cradle my ankle up towards my belly. I should feel that stretch kind of in the side of my hip there. The last two movements we have in our warm-up are our sit-ups and our hip extensions. We're going to take a little bit more time with that and talk about the standards of these movements because they appear here again in the workout. So first we'll talk about our sit-up. If you're fortunate enough to have an ab mat, use it. If not, you can use a small throw pillow or a rolled up towel to create a little bit of a brace and some support for your lumbar curve. What we're looking for our sit-up is a certain degree of closing of our hip angle, and we're going to measure that by our shoulders touching the ground to open our hip angle, and then our shoulders being on top of our hips to close our hip angle. Whether you want to leave your feet flat on the ground or butterfly your feet, we still want to go through that range of motion. A little bit of momentum from the arms is okay, as long as I'm not trying to grab my thighs and pull myself up. So that's going to be our sit-up, and that's going to be our standard for the sit-up in the workout Michael. The final movement here in the warm-up is our hip extension. This is where we have a variety of different options for this movement. Typically we would do a hip extension on a glute ham developer, but that is probably the least likely piece of equipment you have in your home. So here are some options. What we can do here is a PVC or a banded good morning. What I would think about is taking somewhere between a deadlift and a squat stance. I'm going to unlock my knee a little bit, and my object would be on my back. If you have one of our kettlebells or dumbbells, you can hold it at your chest. Basically what I'm going to do here, keeping my lumbar nice and flat, is I'm going to push my hips back, creating tension through the hamstrings and the glutes, and then I'm going to stand up to a tall position. So close the hip angle, open the hip angle. Outside of the good morning, you could see how a small kettlebell swing to eye level would mimic that hip angle. And then finally, if you don't have a broomstick or a band or a PVC for the good morning, you don't have a kettlebell or a dumbbell for some sort of hip extension, you can do a Superman. So I would be prone on the ground. So in that position, what I'm trying to do is squeeze different muscles through my posterior chain to lift my elbows and knees up off of the ground in a controlled fashion and also lower them in a controlled fashion. Following the sit-ups and hip extensions in the warm-up, you can have some time to do some mobility of choice. That brings us to our workout of the day, which is a benchmark workout, Michael. We talked briefly about the stimulus. We should have somewhere between an 18 and a 30-minute workout here. It is an aerobic workout. A large portion of the workout is running. What you're gonna feel from the sit-ups and the hip extensions is you are gonna feel a lot of hip closing through the abs and the hip flexors and even the quads, and you're gonna feel a lot of hip opening through the butt and the hamstrings. So when you go back to that run, what you're really gonna need to think about is using the elasticity in your lower leg that you hopefully developed really well here in the warm-up in a proper body angle or body position to keep moving forward on those runs. Finally, it brings us to the cool down. Like I said earlier in yesterday's post, we want to spend a lot of time on the cool downs. This situation really can present a silver lining by giving us an opportunity to work on things that we weren't patient enough to work on before. So we'll start the cool down with a 200-meter jog, 1 minute of a supine hamstring stretch, 1 minute of calf on pole, 90 seconds of a cobra pose. We'll go through that twice, and then we'll do 2 to 3 minutes of foam rolling on the calf. The supine is a term that means that I'm faced up. If you have a band or some sort of attachment, you can put it around your foot. If you don't, you can grab your foot and you can pull your knee in to load your hip up rather, and then you'd extend to stretch your hamstring. So this would be a supine hamstring stretch. You could hold something there. A really good stretch to incorporate some contract relax or some PNF stretching through that position. Calf on the pole, I'm gonna try to find a right angle on a wall or a pole. I'm gonna bring the bottom of my heel into it and then pull my knee forward with either a straight leg or a bent knee there. There are benefits to both versions of that. And then finally, the cobra pose is essentially the top of one of our prone press-ups. So I'll be here. If this is tough for you, you can turn it into a Sphinx pose, which is just kind of on the elbows, and that will help reopen all those hip flexors that got kind of tight during the 150 sit-ups in Michael. Okay, so that is our typical benchmark workout for our Tuesday class. Post your times, results, anything different that you use for the hip extensions there. And thanks for coming to CrossFit NOLA's online workout.